The ancient Egyptians built pyramids so precise we still can't explain them. Survived in a desert so brutal it would make your phone overheat in seconds, and did it all without electricity, Wi-Fi, or Google. But here's the wild part. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And believe it or not, some of their survival tricks are so clever they still work today. Let's count down 10 ancient Egyptian hacks that could save your butt in a blackout, a heat wave, or even the next apocalypse. 10. Mud brick homes, nature's air conditioner. Let's start with something that literally kept people alive in 100-plus-degree heat. Mud brick houses. Now, we're not talking about your average backyard clay project. Egyptians engineered homes that were like the desert's version of a smart thermostat. The secret? Thermal mass. Mud bricks absorb heat slowly and release it even slower. During the scorching day, the thick earthen walls would stay cool. At night, when the desert got cold, they'd gently release stored warmth, natural insulation, no wires required. They also designed homes with tiny windows, high ceilings, and shaded courtyards, creating airflow paths that worked like ancient AC. Some even used reeds or cloth soaked in water at doorways, so incoming air got a little natural cooling. Swamp cooler, Egyptian edition. Today, architects are still using these principles in sustainable building. And if you've ever wanted a house that works with the climate instead of against it, the Egyptians cracked that code over 4,000 years ago. No smart home app needed, just mud, brains, and desert-hardened common sense. 9. Ancient water hacks, surviving the thirst trap. Imagine walking across the desert with the sun roasting you like a lamb skewer, and there's not a single faucet or even a plastic bottle in sight. Water was life in ancient Egypt. Without it, nothing moved, grew, or survived. And yet, these people figured out how to find it, store it, and make it last in one of the driest climates on Earth. First off, Egyptians were obsessed with the Nile. They didn't just drink from it, they timed their planting, harvesting, and even religious rituals around its flooding cycles. But here's the genius. When water wasn't right there, they knew how to spot it in the environment. Lush plants, bird patterns, moisture-rich valleys. Basically, ancient signs Mother Nature puts up if you know how to read her. Once they had water, they stored it in porous clay jars called zir pots. These weren't just jugs, they were primitive refrigerators. The clay let water slowly seep through and evaporate, cooling the inside. Think of it as the ancient Yeti cooler, but made with mud and patience. They also buried jars underground, used stone basins to collect morning dew, and covered reservoirs with leaves or cloth to prevent evaporation. That's advanced hydration management from people who'd never even heard the word hydration. And don't forget, this was all done while wearing linen, walking barefoot, and probably fighting off sandstorms. So the next time you're worried your water bottle's not cold enough, just remember, 4,000 years ago, Egyptians were already chilling their drinks in the desert. With science. 8. Food preservation. How they kept it fresh without a fridge. Okay, picture this. It's 115 degrees outside, your meat's about to turn into mush, and the nearest refrigerator is 4,000 years in the future. What do? If you were ancient Egyptian, the answer wasn't panic, it was preservation. These folks were pros at making food last without any electricity. They didn't just stumble into it either, they engineered their survival around it. The most popular method? Salt curing. Egypt had access to tons of natural salt from places like Wadi Natrun, and they used it like nature's vacuum sealer. Meat or fish would be completely packed in salt, drying out the moisture and making it nearly impossible for bacteria to throw a party. They also used sun drying. Think strips of meat or dates laid out on rooftops, soaking in the desert heat until they became jerky or raisins. And unlike your modern dehydrator, this one didn't run up your electricity bill. For storage, they leaned on sealed clay jars and baskets lined with palm leaves, airtight, rodent-proof, and reusable. Grains like barley and emmer wheat were stockpiled this way to outlast the seasons, sometimes years. And here's the genius part. They understood seasonal eating. They didn't try to preserve every perishable. Instead, they harvested, stored, and rationed based on nature's calendar, not theirs. It was an entire food system built around survival, not convenience. So if your power ever goes out and the fridge gives up on you, remember, the ancient Egyptians made food last through famines, floods, and the unforgiving Sahara sun, all with salt, clay, and common sense. That's not just survival, that's culinary engineering. 7. Natural medicine. Their pharmacy was the desert. No pharmacies, no doctors with lab coats, no antiseptic wipes. Yet somehow, the ancient Egyptians managed to treat infections, ease pain, and patch themselves up using nothing but what the land gave them. And honestly, some of their remedies still show up in modern medicine. Take honey, for example. Egyptians used it to treat wounds, and science now backs it up. It's naturally antibacterial and keeps cuts from getting infected. They also relied heavily on aloe vera for burns and skin irritations, and even used garlic to boost immunity. That's not folklore, that's ancient biochemistry. Their medical texts, like the Ebers Papyrus, listed hundreds of remedies, everything from crushed herbs and minerals to crocodile dung. Okay, maybe skip that one. But a lot of their plant-based medicines, like frankincense, myrrh, and castor oil, are still used today in skincare, health supplements, and anti-inflammatory treatments. They even practiced basic surgery, setting bones, stitching wounds, draining abscesses, all without anesthesia, just grit and herbal poultices. In a survival situation, these tricks are gold. If you're ever without a first aid kit, knowing what plants to crush and what oils to use might be the difference between healing or hoping. 6. Navigation and timekeeping. Without GPS, no satellites, no watches, no phones, yet ancient Egyptians knew exactly what time it was and where they were going. Out in the open desert, that's not just impressive, it's survival-level genius. Let's start with navigation. These folks used the sun during the day and the stars at night to orient themselves. Ever heard of the star Sirius? Egyptians tracked its rising to predict the Nile's flooding and the new year. Their temples and monuments weren't randomly placed. They were aligned with astronomical events, including solstices and equinoxes. Basically, their religious sites doubled as massive compasses and calendars. Now for timekeeping, they created sundials, shadow clocks, and even clepsydras. That's a fancy name for water clocks. Some could measure hours, others even tracked minutes. One design had a bowl with a tiny hole in the bottom that drained water slowly, giving a surprisingly accurate reading of passing time. Why did this matter? Time meant coordination. When to plant, when to harvest, when to pray, and when to move. In survival terms, it meant knowing how long you could travel before dark, or when the sun would become dangerous. So yeah, next time your phone dies on a hike, just look up. The Egyptians sure did. So 5. Water purification without filters or tech. Imagine trying to survive in a scorching desert, with no Brita filter, no purification tablets, no fancy life straw. The ancient Egyptians had the same problem. The Nile was their lifeline, but it wasn't always clean, and drinking dirty water in that heat. Game over. So they got creative. They figured out natural filtration techniques using materials like sand, gravel, and charcoal. Yep, charcoal. Burnt wood turned into a purifying tool. It absorbs toxins, bacteria, and even smells. Egyptians would pour Nile water through layers of sediment or clay pots lined with charcoal, allowing gravity and chemistry to work their magic. They also used moringa seeds, crushed and stirred into water. Today we know moringa contains natural compounds that cause impurities to clump together and sink, basically nature's version of chemical coagulation. And it works shockingly well. On top of that, they stored water in porous clay jars that kept it cool and prevented bacterial growth. Some jars even had sloped necks to reduce contamination from hands or insects. That's smart design, not just pottery. If you're ever in a survival situation without tech, these ancient methods could absolutely save your life. Sand, seeds, and fire. Who knew clean water was hiding in plain sight? Jag 4. Building natural air conditioning with passive cooling. You think the Egyptian desert was hot? It is hot. Like fry an egg on a sandstone kind of hot. But somehow, ancient Egyptians kept their homes, palaces, and even tombs comfortably cool, without electricity, fans, or even ice. How? Passive cooling. First off, they built using mud brick, a material that holds heat during the day and slowly releases it at night. Their homes had thick walls and small windows to minimize heat entry. And their doors and windows were often placed facing the wind, using natural breezes like ancient AC. But the real magic? The wind catcher. It's a vertical shaft that captures wind from above and funnels it down into rooms. As the hot air inside rose and escaped, cooler air rushed in to replace it. Totally natural, totally genius. Some wealthier homes even had evaporative cooling systems. They'd pour water over mats or pots placed at entrances. The airflow would pass through the damp material, cooling it before entering the room. So next time you complain about a broken AC, remember, Egyptians beat the heat with bricks, breeze, and brains. Honestly, your tent on a summer hike could use some of this ancient engineering. 3. Preserving food without a refrigerator. Let's be real, without a fridge, most of us are one hot afternoon away from a questionable sandwich. But ancient Egyptians, they were masters at keeping food fresh long before Kenmore existed. They had to be. Food spoiled fast under that blazing sun. So they leaned on drying, salting, fermenting, and sealing to make things last. One of their most common tricks, sun drying. Fruits, fish, and even meat were laid out on racks in the dry desert heat, removing moisture which bacteria need to grow. Salting was another go-to. They'd pack meat in salt to draw out water and create an inhospitable environment for microbes. That's the same principle behind jerky and preserved fish today. They also sealed foods in clay jars with olive oil, wax, or even honey, which is naturally antibacterial. Not just for flavor, this kept air and bugs out. Even wine was stored in amphorae, sealed with natural resins to prevent oxidation. And guess what? Bread was often baked in massive batches and stored with ash layers to keep pests away. Bottom line, they didn't just survive, they thrived. Your next camping trip snacks would seriously benefit from these timeless hacks. 2. Using natural medicine from plants and minerals. Modern medicine is great, but if you strip away the lab coats and Latin, a lot of it goes back to what the ancient Egyptians already knew. Their approach to healing was a full-on pharmacy of the earth, and many of their remedies still hold up today. Take honey, for example. They used it on wounds to prevent infection, and modern science backs it. Honey's antibacterial properties are legit. They also used willow bark for pain relief, which contains salicin, the natural precursor to aspirin. Got a stomachache? Egyptians reached for mint and cumin, both excellent for digestion. Eye infections. They applied malachite powder, copper-based and antimicrobial. And don't forget aloe vera, a classic skin soother that's still in your mum's bathroom cabinet today. Their medical texts, like the Ebers Papyrus, list over 700 remedies made from plants, minerals, and animal parts. Sure, not all of them aged well, looking at you, crocodile dung pessaries, but many natural remedies they used are still in use around the world. They didn't just rely on the mystical, they observed, tested, and passed down what worked. It's a reminder that when you really listen to nature, you might just find your cure growing in your backyard. Number 1. Purifying water with the power of the sun. Before there were Brita filters or bottled water brands pretending to be from crystal alpine springs, the Egyptians were already on top of water purification. And they did it using something you probably take for granted: sunlight. They knew that stagnant water wasn't safe, so they figured out that if you left water in a clay or clear container under the hot sun, it became noticeably better to drink. Today we call this solar disinfection, or SODIS. It works because UV rays from the sun kill off bacteria and parasites over time. Some records suggest they even added a few crushed seeds or moringa to help with filtration, a method scientists still research today for third world water solutions. Clay pots also played a role. Their porous texture slowly filtered out sediment while allowing slight evaporation, which cooled the water and improved taste. Simple, sustainable, and totally off-grid. In a desert, hydration isn't optional, it's survival. And the Egyptians figured out a trick so timeless that modern preppers, campers, and humanitarian aid workers still swear by it. Next time you're stuck without clean water, just remember, the sun isn't just for tanning, it's one of the oldest water purifiers known to man. So 10 survival tricks from ancient Egypt, And guess what? Most of them still slap today. Whether it's disinfecting water with the sun, using honey as a healing balm, or keeping cool with linen and shade, these people knew how to handle the extremes of life and death. In style, survival wasn't a hobby. It was a science. And if they could make it work with no electricity, no Google, and no running water, you can definitely steal a few of these for your next camping trip. Hit that like button if you learned something ancient but useful, and subscribe for more mind-blowing history hacks.